Hello and welcome to the Navy Blue Corner. I'm Ian, joined as always by my good mate Lockie. And in true Carlton fashion, straight off the back of a big statement win, our best performance of the 2025 season, we come crashing back down to reality with a absolutely horrific loss against the Adelaide Crows, losing by 60 points, 10 goals. Now, Lockie, mate, it was rough. We all struggled. We're recording this midweek in another little midweek special.
Yeah.
So how are you going and how have you handled the loss throughout the week?
I'm pretty well, thank you, mate. To be honest, I haven't thought about this match a whole lot since it happened because to me, I'm kind of putting it in the basket of like Hawthorn last year of just a completely helpless performance. And to be honest, I'm just left with a real lack of clarity, I guess, on where I think we are right now.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you straight off the bat your kind of snapshot thoughts about the performance. That almost really feels
Yeah.
like where you're coming from with this. So that's kind of been where I think a lot of fans are trying to pin this game is this an anomaly? Is this us? You're saying it is a bit more of that anomaly. Considering, I guess, let's take that as one little bit. You mentioned the Hawthorn game from last year. There were a lot of injuries that I think a lot of Carlton
Yeah.
supporters put that down to. There weren't really many injuries leading into the game. It was sort of Jack Silvani and Matty Cottrell, maybe a little bit of Zach Williams, none that really should derail it. There wasn't anything during that game. So why for you was that the anomaly and not the real Carlton, considering we've had some bad performances like a Richmond as well this season?
Oh, I'm not necessarily saying that it is a full anomaly. It's an anomaly in terms of what we've seen from us, in terms of like, we've had plenty of losses in the Voss era, but even if you look at the first 4 games of this season, they're all games where we were leading. There was always something in the podcast for you and I to kind of look at in terms of positives. And when I try and think about that for this game, it was just such a domination to where 60 points didn't even feel like enough. So I'm not saying it's an anomaly in terms of, we're actually still that top 4 team, and this is just a crazy match, even though I kind of felt like that after the game. It's more an anomaly in that, like, it just didn't feel like us in any way. And when you look at the stats, it's just completely not us.
Yeah, I totally get where you're coming from in what you're mentioning as far as that everything broke down compared to our other losses this season. But I'm probably looking at it a little bit more negatively than you at the moment. And yeah, I guess that result wasn't overly surprising, but weirdly, it doesn't make it any more disappointing because we've struggled against Adelaide quite a lot over those last few years. You kind of can expect an away loss against Adelaide. They've been pretty decent this season, but the way we did it is probably what is the unacceptable way. And I think, what we just saw last week against Geelong, we just saw our best performance. Thought that was going to turn into a bit of confidence, something building into this season where maybe we can make a bit of a run. And for it to just switch so quickly within one game of what we saw to the worst performance of the year, now we didn't even get to enjoy that Cats win for more than a couple of days. That Geelong win's going to be distant memory. It almost doesn't mean anything now. And yeah, as I said, losing wasn't really unexpected, but that kind of performance, that big momentum building week to turn into this is just so disheartening. And it puts us in such a weird spot where we just continue to fluctuate so much from week to week. And because of that is maybe where I'm being more negative on it and not giving them as much of an out as I think where you're seeing it right now. And I guess I'll flow on to my next point that I was going to kind of ask you, which is they dismantled us comprehensively every single part of this ground. Every single thing that there is there to be won, we were nowhere near it. Adelaide killed us. And going off your point, is it as simple as we just don't match up against the Crows and that's why the result was as bad as it was? You could argue right now we've got Geelong's number, beaten them the last few times. We seem to match up quite well against how they want to play and how we want to play. Clearly, Adelaide are that team against us. Does it simply come down to matchup, game style, personnel, and it being that simple, or should we be expecting more in games like this?
Yeah, it's a fair question. I'd love to be able to honestly ask like the players and the coaches of whether they feel like that is the case or not. Like we were all dreading going into Adelaide Oval to play them in this game. Like you probably saw this on the fixture pre-season and would have thought like we've got to go over there and do that. That's not going to be fun. I don't know if it doesn't really stand out to me in a matchup sense like that. Like, I don't know. I just don't know if that resonates with me, considering there's 23 players out on the field, whether it can be that kind of granular as in a matchup way. I definitely think that we're out-coached in this, and plenty of our players didn't stand up. But I was optimistic that we could win this game, even though it feels pretty evident that Adelaide are a better team.
Yeah, it's such a strange one, and the matchup's clearly an issue. I think sometimes there are teams that they're like our strengths clearly don't work that well in the way Adelaide want to play, and their strengths completely kill us and dismantle us. And we wanted a contested game. That's our strength. They will manage to manufacture it and turn it into that uncontested style of football. Without the contest, we can't bring the pressure. Without the contest, we can't win the territory battle. Without that, there's no front half pressure, and that feels like how we bring our pressure at all. So without the contest, there's no pressure. There's no front half pressure. There's nothing right now. And that match really highlighted our biggest issue, discrepancy, flaw. And while saying that, I don't think you can just put it down to it's a bad matchup, so let's just wipe that as a poor week. We need to be better than that. This, even though it's Adelaide, it's away from home. It's one, if you're penciling in all the fixtures throughout the season, you probably say that's a loss. You need to be more competitive than that. We've had too many poor losses this season and poor performances, even though the margin maybe hasn't been there in all of them, where copping a loss like this, it just puts you 10 steps back from where you were. We can't be in this spot now. We're clawing at everything just to get that even ledger back and build back into this season. I do worry what that does for us confidence building from this point. And I think the biggest frustration out of it is this is 4 years into this iteration of Carlton, 4 years of the same way we lose to Adelaide every single year. I don't understand how we can't figure it out. That Adelaide and Knicks have just got our number and we don't know how to fix this. They were better prepared, better coached, outplayed. And off the back of one of Vossi's best coaching performances, we get one of his worst. And it's just so volatile right now. It makes it really hard to assess what we are.
It's true. And this isn't necessarily an optimistic take, but just to then step back away from Carlton, like watching the Crows last week lose to the Dockers in a performance from Fremantle that was good, I thought, to then the Dockers playing one of the worst games of football that I've seen a team play in the last couple of years this week and losing to St Kilda. So, and that's the team that beat the Crows just a week earlier. So it's a lot more complicated when you think about all the matchups and how it is all intertwined. But yeah, the fact of the matter is if we won this game, we were going to be in the top 8 and you're looking at things a lot differently than we are right now.
Yeah, I mean, you'd nail it there. And that was one of the notes that I had, losing to Adelaide and Adelaide, it isn't a disaster. Just that. It's clear the performance and the manner in which we did it that was the issue. You can have those off weeks.
Exactly.
I mean, I wrote down a list of some of them. Obviously Adelaide last week, you mentioned lose to Freo. Freo lose to the Saints by 61, and that was one of the worst games I've seen most of their players play. Brayshaw couldn't touch the footy, which was horrific for my supers. Gold Coast losing to Richmond, Brisbane lose to Collingwood at home by 52, and they're a team that are definitely above the last few I've mentioned in meant to be that kind of top 4 contender. These results can happen in this league. There's fluctuations of form around the place more than I think we've ever seen in any other season.
I agree.
The bigger issue for us is that because we came back from 0-4, our starting point is so far back, we can't afford to experience those types of losses. If this was that hard fought to the end type of loss, you could probably walk away and be okay with it to a degree. But you just can't do it from here. Fans are still on edge, and this one just slaps you on the face and really reiterates all the concerns that we have. We don't get that extra week of thinking, okay, what's good is good. We can keep building. This just shows you clear in the face every single deficiency that this team has right now. And it's funny because off the back of that, I still think we can win 2 out of the next 3 or 3 of the next 3.
Me too.
But I think this loss just, as I said, it confirms what we have to fix and what we need to do to basically be that top side that doesn't have these form fluctuations. And unfortunately, because these things keep happening, we're not that team.
No, we aren't right now. Yeah, I know. We can talk more about this game, of course, but the sentiment for me is like after the West Coast game where we were like, all right, let's just get us to Geelong now. Like I'm just ready to see that next thing. That's where I'm at right now, where a bad loss against the Saints, that's when I'll be ready to kind of really react to the performance. Whereas right now I look through all the stats, which I'm sure you've got plenty of them written down, but like what's one that I can cherry pick? The 6 marks inside 50 to 20.
Yeah.
Like that, I just can't overreact to that too much from one performance, even though it's absolutely deplorable.
I feel like I wish I'd put the timestamp down, but I think it was like a Sam Walsh mark. Might have been late second quarter. That was our first mark inside 50 for the game. And that kind of tells you that what we were trying to do was so bad. And it's the worry of when it goes bad, it goes nuclear bad. That's one of those really big concerns right now. And I guess I want to ask you, because you're definitely in that more trying to be somewhat positive out of this, which there's no right or wrong way to be right now. And I feel like we're a little bit opposite. So I like kind of picking your brain on this. I want to delve slightly deeper into the kind of anomaly part of this. And were you able to maybe learn a little bit more about where we are? You said we win this game. Okay, we're starting to build. We're in the 8. You see us maybe more as that team. We obviously lose this one.
Yeah.
So were we maybe a bit premature in our praise over the last 3 weeks? Or where do we sit for you before this St Kilda game?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that definitely a little premature, and that was inevitable. It was inevitable that was going to happen, at least for me. Even with the North and West Coast wins, let alone the really great Geelong win. I still believe that we can finish top 4 this season. Just this hasn't changed perspective on that. Kind of just going to our conversation before about how every team now, except maybe one, has had a shocking performance this year. And I know you can talk about the first 4 rounds, but this was the really, really shocking all-round performance. There's lots of different individual parts of the game that we can talk about. I don't know how interesting they are. Like we put Blakers on watch the last couple of weeks. We didn't want them to bring Doherty back in, but they did. So there's some personnel things like that. The midfield is still just something off there in the way that they're all connecting. And we need to find ways for some of those small forwards to do more when things aren't going right. And I won't name names because you could throw 4 guys really into that bucket. So there are a few things that come to mind as like the the reasons to be, the ways to look forward, I guess. Yeah, not necessarily reasons to be positive, because I don't really have any positives from this game. But I'm trying to do the thing that we said, which is a week ago, not overreact too much
Yeah.
to a loss.
Yeah, and I think that's completely valid. I still don't see us as that top four, but I haven't seen
Yeah,
us as that for quite some time. And
exactly.
I think the way the ladder in the league is shaping up, obviously, it's still quite early. A lot can shift and happen. I hate going back to 2023, but it's not just us. It's more us and GWS were sitting bottom four
Yeah.
thereabouts, and all of a sudden, midway point, both played in prelim final. So clearly, just because you're sitting up the top right now doesn't mean you'll stay there. You have to grind out the season. But I think it's going to be hard for 7 of those teams to maybe be dislodged right now. Brisbane, Collingwood, Hawthorn, Doggies, Geelong feel pretty nailed on in that top 8. I think Gold Coast with their run and how they're playing should be there. Same for Adelaide with what they're able to do. Again, it's early, but I feel like anyone else breaking in right now, you pretty much talk about the rest of those teams fighting: GWS, Freo, St Kilda, Essendon, Port, us, and Sydney. Maybe throw Melbourne into it if you really want. All of us have been so much more inconsistent than those other 7. And that's probably the concern right now, in just the gap in building towards that top 4 where I don't see
For
us.
sure.
And looking at what's the reality of Carlton, that's kind of the big thing out of this. And I agree with you in the sense of, bless you, Lockie,
Oh, I missed the
not
mute
going
button.
too high after the Geelong game, not getting too low after a loss. But yeah, I think looking at it holistically, the Geelong game is clearly not the reality, but I also don't believe the Adelaide game is. I think the season in totality right now, from the evidence we've received, is simply where we are at. This iteration of Carlton isn't good enough to be that top consistent team. And we're going to have good wins. We're going to have good weeks. But I think these types of losses are going to continue and be a part of it as well. Like I said, Freo is the team that comes to mind with where we're at. There's good, there's bad, but the gap between both is just so much. And there's list flaws, there's system flaws, there's coaching flaws. So I just don't see us being able to iron those out by the end of the season and really compete. I think we can be in the 8, and who knows if we are there. You just need a couple of weeks of form right near the end to get it done. But I think there's more concerns than things I can truly depend on that has me thinking we're just more middle of the pack. And the big thing I thought about so much this week in that overreaction, underreaction, trying to find the balance, it's no wonder this fan base is so volatile in our emotions, because the team that we support and watch each week, Lockie, are the most volatile team, I think, in world sport. That gap between our good and the bad is just so vast. And I think on top of that, it's never a gradual swing. It's rarely a nice 3 to 4 weeks of it slowly falling away, or 3 to 4 weeks of it slowly building up. It's week to week, best football, worst football. And I think that right there just shows the lack of consistency in those issues with us right now. I think I can accept a degree of fluctuations because we know how close this competition is. But the level that we're witnessing 4 years into this build, I'm just so concerned. And it's such a bizarre thing right now. But
Yeah.
I just kind of wanted to look at that from a fan perspective, because a lot of outsiders will always paint Carlton as these, they think they're winning the flag one week and then, they want to sack everyone. But if you have to watch this week in, week out, Lockie, it's going to be hard to maintain some kind of healthy emotions.
It's true. Yeah, I like that you went to the fan side. I was reflecting on that as well in the past few days, especially the 4 years into this era aspect, because I don't think that this kind of volatility was as, what's the word, painful early on in this era. It's the fact that we're now, we came into last season with high expectations. We've come into this season, some of us, like myself, with very high expectations, others with slightly lower because of last season. And because of that, it's performances like this that just hurt even more. Because, a team that isn't expected to be doing a lot in 2025, having a performance like this, it just hurts less. And I agree with most of the things you're saying. The one thing that I don't agree with is, and would you bet that we have another 50+ point loss this season?
Yes, I think so.
I will happily bet
Yeah.
against that. I do not think that we will have another 50-point loss this season. So I
I
don't know
really
what
hope
stakes you want to put on that. But
yeah, we'll maybe have to discuss that. Maybe the listeners will have to help us with that and try and find a little bit of a wager on the podcast. And it's not one I like making, and I hope you're right. I hope I lose and I come on here and look like an idiot in whatever punishment that I have to do. Maybe I have to do a My Blue Heaven and throw a bunch of eggs on my face, which probably isn't ideal with the price of eggs right now. So we might need some sort of egg dealer to get them for cheap. But it's the volatility in everything that makes me think it's possible. And out of this, the other learning I feel it's a little bit more cemented is we really do struggle to defend the ground when teams take the ball off us. And it's not just that uncontested side of the game, but it's when you can move the ball quickly and spread wide. I really look at this game. I look at Hawthorn and how they play against us. If there's a big ground, they use the full width. They spread us wide, leaving so much gap. Cut inboard, move the ball quick, move the ball fast, and we just don't seem to be able to go. We can't adjust. We can't fix it. We never seem to narrow the ground for these kinds of teams, and that's the concern for me. When it's not going our way, when we can't bring the pressure, when we can't win it in the contest, what else do we have? That's been the concern for a while, and when it gets this bad, when it's taken away, which to our credit, we've been able to scrap in a lot of the games we haven't played well so far, which is probably going to your point. But when it does finally fall down, I think we just get far too exposed. The gap between where it should be when you're getting clearly beaten and this just seems too much.
Yeah, I hear all that. And maybe I don't want to boycott your run sheet here, but I mentioned before, like, a few of the things that, it felt like went wrong in this game.
Yeah.
Are there
Let's go
others that
straight into
stood
it,
out to you
if you want.
that I didn't mention? Yeah, I'm keen to hear your thoughts on those things.
Yeah, so as far as what went wrong, that's the big question. I've got plenty of points to this because not much went right. I think early on you could really sense we just couldn't get that pressure going, and it's hard to put your finger on what that is. Is that as simple as the mental side of it? Because last week it was there from the start to the end. Everyone was up and about. You could sense this tackling with hunger. Everything was 100%. And you really feel like this is another challenge for you to show that. And we've had a few weeks now building that confidence. It not being there is so frustrating. We just gave them so many easy looks at goal, and weirdly we were hanging around on the scoreboard for longer than I imagined because we were just giving them space in that sort of 45, 50 forward arc for Adelaide. They were just chipping through, getting those easy marks, getting those shots on goal. And at the end of the day, we just could not get our hands on the football to get any control pretty much for 4 quarters.
Yeah, no, 100%. I don't even know what to add to that because, it's crazy when it is just such a stark difference, like you said. Like, how is it the same guys in the same jerseys a week later?
And so I think there needs to be some perspective because it definitely, and I'm guilty of this too. Everyone is, but you win and all of a sudden, oh, how good are all these players? The fringe players, they look elite. Maybe we do have depth. You then have a loss like this and it's the whole squad shit, Lockie. We need to trade everyone out. We need to rebuild. What are we doing? And again, it goes back to that volatility of what we see, hence why we react that way. but we do need to try and sit more in the middle of this, clearly understand and accept what is bad, but clearly there is still some good in this squad. It's just how we get that out and stop the bad being this horrific, because I think that goes to kind of my next big issue, which was how Adelaide completely shut down how we tried to move the football. We just had no answers. They closed those short little chip kick options, particularly building from our back half, which was the most pleasing thing from last week. And that's where I kind of struggle with, what is it that worked so well last week that we were able to manufacture those options? Is it because it wasn't as uncontested? We weren't as tired? Is that fitness? Did Adelaide do something different to Geelong in how they defended the ground and we weren't able to find another option? Because we couldn't find another way to get things going. Soon as those options weren't there, we went back to long down the line. And then the bigger problem with that was clearly there comes a time when we've got the ball on our D50, you look around, there's no options. Everyone on the ground knows you're going long down the line. So how come every single time we did that, we had no representation in the air, Lockie, and it was uncontested marks to 2-on-1? And sometimes when we did have guys in the air, we never had representation on the ground, and they were just able to pick it out. And every single time Adelaide won the football, they had 2 or 3 options in an outnumber. Flow on effect from that. Good luck trying to defend the ground. And this seems like it's happened more than once, definitely more than once against Adelaide. So the question marks go back to probably the coaching firstly, in what are we doing to try and fix this, to nullify the influence Adelaide have with their spread, and why are those players then on the ground unable to actually fix it? And I know none of us have the answers clearly, but it's just such a stark problem, and it plays out so badly, always against the Crows.
Yeah, I think you need to use that as your application to join the press conferences and get some proper answers. Yeah, it's really true. It's so painful to be watching that. Yeah, like you said, when every person watching around the country knew where that next kick was going to go. Why?
Did you have any clear issues or concerns from that game where you saw it really going wrong from what was such a contrast last week?
I think, yeah, I know. My mind always goes to individuals in times like this, and like it was such a difference to me in how Walsh looked in like his midfield role last week, where we were praising him so much and feeling like he'd kind of found his way in that group. For him to have such little impact, I know sometimes you don't want to call out like individuals in this time when like it felt like pretty much everything went wrong, but and we can talk about like the role players and the lesser guys not performing, but like it's like how I know he's a freaking 2-time Brownlow medalist, but how many times does Cripper have a terrible game? So rare. And there's just no one else. I mean, you could probably put Hewitt in that as well. There's just no one else that we can count on like that.
It's annoying that Cripper seems to always have his best games when no one else steps up with him and we have a horrific loss. Because I thought he was one of the few that was decent, like one of our shining lights, if you can call that, in this game. And I mean, do you think, like, is it a bit of a concern now that it is so midfield or nothing? Or is it as simple as it's our stars or nothing, which is every team? I mean, De Koning was monstered by O'Brien.
Yeah.
Walsh couldn't get a touch. Chera couldn't build his way into the game. Hewitt and Cripps were doing their best, but the midfield were fumbly. They were panicky with ball in hand, beaten at our one-wood in the contest. We couldn't deal with their spread. They took away our best thing. We couldn't defend what we knew we weren't going to be able to. So where do you kind of see the midfield and that being such a crutch for us and how we play good football?
Yeah, I think it's yeah, probably the most important topic, I guess, coming out of this game for me, because like you said, so many of our stars are in there, and we need the stars to be performing to win. That's just what this game is. I continue to wonder if we're just utilizing the guys in the right way. Please, can we end the Motlop thing in there? That is one thing. I know this is only a small part of it, but like, I think we need to stop with that personally. Like, we've tried and tried. We've got Lord, who we all know is just someone that needs to be inside at the contest, playing half forward, being so ineffective. I know that these aren't the things that cost us the game, but it feels like the low hanging fruit that can just make it better. Yeah, I just feel like we need to find a way to allow Walshy to get the ball in more space and not be the one doing the dirty work. I think we just need to be, clearer on letting Cripps and Hewitt do their thing in there, and allowing the others to kind of be a bit more outside. It feels like at times we have 4 inside midfielders all trying to get the ball in, trying to get it out, and then there's no one to get it out to. Maybe that's too of a simplistic take, but it feels like a bit of a common theme.
Do you think that's why they're persisting with a Motlop in there? Just a different variation of that midfield, and clearly it's not working well for us. And I think it's hurting Motlop's game a lot because he's playing a different role that I would put my bets on he wasn't training there in preseason. I feel like this was a Jagger Smith kind of high half forward roll into the midfield role that Jesse Motlop has now been thrust upon. Because of that, is there anyone else you can see rolling through that spot? Do you think we need to just let Jesse be that small forward and get his confidence back? Where do you kind of see that midfield makeup right now?
Yeah, I think you give Lord the time that Jesse's having, plus give him some more and take it away from Walsh, and then just try and have Walsh and Cherub be the outside guys and be like, just stop. Just don't go in there. Do not go into the pack. Like, be patient. Again, I don't know if that's too simplistic or not, but yeah, for me, it would be, if we're going to play Lord, do not put him at half forward where he can't do anything. If we're going to play Motlop, like, how many times has he won? How many times has he got the ball in those situations this year? Like, it seems so rare.
I remember a great one against North streaming forward, but
I remember that one too.
It looked beautiful. The issue is defensively as a midfielder, how many times does his opponent win the ball in those big center clearances and the opposition go the other way? I mean, it's no surprise Adelaide ended up kicking 5 goals from center bounces. Our midfield was off. TDK was horrific this week against Riley O'Brien. I thought that was a matchup I was licking my hands with, and he got absolutely monstered. We'll have this conversation at some point. Maybe it's after the Saints game because of all the contract talk with Tom de Koning and the numbers getting thrown around for his worth. But that game kind of shows you right there why 1.7 for any ruckman, or especially Tom de Koning right now, is list suicide. It's stupid to be paying him that much. Tom's an absolute star. He's a great footballer, but he's still got clear deficiencies and he's not giving you 9, 10 out of 10 game-winning performances every single week. And, gee, when it goes wrong, it's going wrong. I mean, it feels like the midfield is everything right now. I was more confident going into this game thinking the midfield starts to struggle. Maybe we've got other avenues because of what we showed against Geelong, but it just isn't there. And big credit to Adelaide. They worked us out. They did their research, and you kind of see what happens off the back of that. Yeah,
no, exactly right. Exactly right. And just to finish the Motlop thought, like, I know you could make the argument that, maybe it isn't working now, but like, strategically, is this something that is smart for us to be trying to do for the future? Lord, we correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that Lord is going to be a part of our future of this team. So let's get him in there in the position that he's supposed to be.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I guess my other biggest issue, and it's weirdly this was almost 2 dot points, but it's the same thing, just reversed,
Mhm.
Lockie. Kick-ins.
Mm.
Kick-ins.
Our
This,
favourite topic.
how long has this been an issue? Which is just baffling right now. We can't defend them. Again, concede easy goals from kick-ins. And it's not just conceding the goals, it's just conceding territory within 2
So
kicks within
true.
2 seconds. We can't set up. And then
Mhm.
offensively, that was the worst we have tried to move the ball from a kick-in a very long time. And it's not a high bar that has been set before that. And it
So
got to the
true.
point, and again, I don't want to go specific players because there was about 2 players that can say they played well on the weekend. But it got
Yeah.
to the point where I was watching every time McGovern had a kick in, and I was saying, give the ball to Sard.
Yeah.
Because every kick in was no one's moving, there's no options. Adelaide have cut the space. Now I've got to try and figure out a way to conjure up something. And Paul McGovern, I mean, he's there
Yeah.
trying his hardest to conjure up a kick that's not on so we can try and get us moving. But it caused a turnover and it was horrific. At least when Sard was doing it, I felt we were getting 5, 10, 15% more out of it. But how are we? Surely this is a coaching deficiency, our ability
Mm.
to structure up defending kick-ins and then not being able to have these tricky set plays when the ball's in hand. It feels like it's the easiest way that you can get control of the game, where every other team is so happy when you concede a point because it's okay, sweet, we can hold the ball now. We're the only team I go, oh no, we've got the ball, I don't want this. What is going on with
So
kick-ins?
true. So true. I have less answers on this than anything.
Mm.
I don't. I don't know. And like you said, the most worrying part is that this has been a through line of this entire podcast for the last 5 years. What could you say? What could
Yeah.
you say?
No, it's until it gets fixed. It's just something that I think these are the little things where you and I differ on that optimistic side.
Yeah.
This feels like such a basic part and component of AFL right now, where because that's not working, I
Mm.
I don't have that optimism in us being that top 4 side. But which is
Mm.
probably why you see it as such a thing of why we could be that top 4 side, because it feels like it's such an easy fix. And if you fix that, how infinitely better do you become off the back of it? And it's why, like the fluctuations in form, like the volatility of fans, there is such a vast spectrum of, I just think, opinions and where everyone sits right now on what Carlton is.
Definitely. But for me, it's also a combination of optimism of Carlton and pessimism of the other teams in the league. Because, like I always say, I watch more football here in London than I do in Australia because of the time zones. And every team has the ability to stink it up and have problems that seem so glaring that they make you say, this isn't a top 8 team. Even a lot of the teams that you mentioned before that you said are locks, and maybe they are. They've done things this year where you go, that is not a finals team. So I choose to have my optimism in us rather than a team like Gold Coast, for example.
Nah, and it's very fair enough. And maybe this is a positive if you can maybe spin it that way. But I'm interested to get your thoughts. And again, the listeners, anyone watching this, drop your thoughts to everything we've covered on YouTube. Listening in audio form, head over to the socials at Navy Blue Corner. Links are in the description and show notes, which don't even have to go anywhere. There's a link for you. But
how good?
I noticed something a little bit in something that wasn't working for us. And it feels like it was an easy reason why. Now, fixing this is potentially more difficult, but maybe it at least puts a spotlight on a deficiency that can be fixed. And that was just that one of the big issues for us, apart from just getting our hands on the football, was movement and particularly mid-forward connection. When we won the football, no matter where it was, there was nothing. The structure, everything just felt flat. Is it any wonder that happens when we don't have Cottrell, we don't have Zach Williams pretty much our two high half forwards that are creative, the guys that we want the ball in hand, moving it inside 50. Do we have anyone else on the list outside of those and maybe Elijah that are that mid forward connection? Where do you kind of see that in the skill set? Because I think there's one, but it's Horatio Fantasia, who is out indefinitely with whatever calf injury he potentially has that I'm getting more concerned about week on week with this man. So yeah, I'm very interested to
It's a great point.
Get your thoughts on that mid forward connection.
Yeah, it's a really good point. When we did last week's episode, I don't believe we knew that Cottrell was going to be out. And the Williams one was one that probably people were, including myself, were underplaying potentially the impact of it. We all were worried about Silvani going out, but potentially not him. It's clearly one of the biggest problems with this team, like the fact that we did manage to, have the ball at least 300 times, to then go inside 50. What was it? It was less than 40 times, I think. I don't have the stat in front of me, but yeah. And then when we did go in there, oh my God, just awful system.
It all broke down. There was no options.
Like all you can do is shake your head. Yeah, 36 inside 50s is just insane. So even getting the ball into a position where we can go inside 50 was a struggle enough. And then the times we went in there, it was so awful. It shows the importance of that role for us. It shows the reason why you and I spoke about this last off season, as that still being something for us to be looking at and targeting. And I don't know, are any of the youngsters, the guys that aren't really getting a go that are in the VFL, like not saying that they're the answer next week, but the answer next year to you?
Well, that's my concern. I don't see it on the list. And we moved on to guys who we couldn't depend upon because they weren't fit. That, again, skill set wise with this, Cunningham, Jack Martin, they help that. Clearly, much like a Fantasia and Zach Williams, and maybe even Cottrell to a point, all of these guys that are playing this role that we've had over the last few seasons, we can't say they're going to be fit to play a full season. And I'm looking at the skill set across the board, and I don't see anyone that makes sense on our list right now that can really do that. Ashton Moy is a forward, but he feels more a marking spark option inside 50 than someone who has the tank to push up. We don't really have anyone in that position, which is maybe worrying the way it, as I think I pointed this out after round one or early on in this season, that the importance of these half forwards in the game right now, the small forwards and the speed. We saw how well it worked when it was going well for us in that 3-game patch. When it goes bad, it feels like that's an area that really broke down. And yeah, a bit of a cause for concern. And I'm interested to see maybe once we get these few players back, if we can get a run with them, if all of a sudden things start to turn and we can look back at this conversation and say, wow, that is a really key point to how we're trying to play. We just maybe don't have the personnel available to get us there. But yeah, I just thought it was an interesting little perspective to bring up, and maybe it is a positive for us going forward.
No, I'm glad that you brought it up. It felt like Kerno was being used as that connector, and the way that he was putting the ball inside 50. Oh my God. That was something that it feels like is a strength of his, and it wasn't working in this game. So yeah, very keen to hear suggestions of how that role can be played better.
100%. But let's move on to the listener questions, Lockie. We had a fair few, which was good. A lot of messages, which was beautiful. Sliding into the DMs. So yeah, what were they, Lockie? Any great questions?
Yeah, so we've got 3 here that we're going to call out. So one from Clint. Why are we so inconsistent, Ian? Is it complacency, poor coaching, or, as Wiedering said the other week, mentally weak? What do you think?
It's tough. It's a tough one to answer, Lockie. And the complacency thing is interesting because we thought that Geelong win last year was a turning point, and not long after that, it really started to turn. I mean, there's a stat going around, and maybe I need to actually fact check this myself, but they're saying We've been able to beat Geelong twice, North twice, and West Coast twice, and they're the only teams we've beaten in this run. Not that it helps the argument at all, but I'm pretty sure we beat Richmond the week after that Geelong game, which again does not help this argument in beating any good teams. But give us an extra one. Stop trying to take away these wins that we've been able to get. But again, we've had a big win against Geelong, and it seems to have kind of fallen off straight after that. You could argue maybe complacency, but I think it's a bit deeper than that. I'd be very worried if they really thought anything, not sitting in the 8, still not sitting with a positive win-loss ledger. I really think there's just so many flaws in our game, with our list, with the ability to coach on game day and really figure out the opposition that, like I've mentioned, we're going to have some really good weeks. We're going to have some good wins, but I think we're going to have these kinds of losses. I'm seeing too many things that are staying issues. We're seemingly not fixing them over long periods of time. And that's why, I just see us that sort of 13-7 right now on the ladder. Yeah. And I hope it can fix, but I mean, we'll find out.
Yeah. No, it's a good answer. It's a good answer. I really like this question. I was thinking about this from the press conference as well. So from Alex, Voss in the presser said many players failed to execute the plan. This seems to be a recurring response from the last 15 games or so. Is Voss's plan too complicated or difficult to execute? Does it need to be altered into something more repeatable? And it's an interesting question for me, because I was thinking that listening to Vossi and trying to think about I wonder what he's referring to in terms of those roles. Like, is that roles in terms of the reason players are in the team week on week, or is it specific tasks given to players in this game, whether that was to minimize the impact of an opposition player or to do something different? So I found that an interesting comment.
Yeah, and it probably goes back to where you were pressing me quite hard earlier in this season, which I absolutely thought was great from you as well to get me to answer some questions. But it was around this. We've had kind of 4 years now of Voss. There's still issues. Surely it comes back to him. If he's got this game plan that he's saying execute and you're not executing it, either he's the problem tactically or player isn't executing, get someone in that will. And so this kind of is maybe a better version of what I was trying to argue, but doing it really poorly, in the sense that he's coming out in these press conferences saying, we're just not playing our way. That's not us, seems to be the rhetoric at the moment. And that's fair enough to say, this isn't what I've been telling them to do. This isn't what I think we're capable of. When it just keeps happening, I put it back straight on Voss and it's probably not answering the question well, Alex, but it's the case of clearly your tactics aren't up to scratch, but you haven't done enough over these 4 years fighting for your job every single week you go out there to get players to get it done. And if you're asking player X to play his role, and each week you're going to the press conference saying they're not getting it done, with not a ridiculous amount of different players out there from kind of where we started, I've got to put it back on Voss and say, well, that's your fault for not bringing in players that can do it, for not moving on those that aren't. And it's just a big frustration around this. I think... I really doubt he has got some tactical mastermind game plan that people can't comprehend. It feels like there's just clearly some deficiency going wrong, and it feels like everything should be repeatable now. When you win the ball, you should know exactly where you go. Okay, I'm under pressure in this situation. What's that one play Vossi's been telling us every single week at training? Like, I know it's really stupid, and maybe dumb for the listeners, but like, we played some good touch rugby in high school.
Oh, here we go.
To a decent little bit of success, Lockie. But
we did.
What was the one play that we did every single week to the point where we got sick of doing it and we kept getting yelled at because we wouldn't do it properly because we were bored of it?
Time after time, yeah.
We kept doing it. And eventually got to the point where, you get sick of it because you know it so well. But then in gameplay, when it's there to be done, you execute it perfectly. We got the tries every single time and teams couldn't stop it. Now, that has to be something that he's done at the football club. Clearly it is. They're much smarter than, under 16s playing a bit of touch football. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
it's just baffling that we get
No,
in
it's
these
fair.
situations and it doesn't feel like we know how to get out of them. 4 years in, it should be such easy muscle memory now.
It's honestly funny because it's so true. But let's wrap up the listener questions with Brock, who said, I love TDK, me too, and his ability around the ground. But when he loses in the ruck, we lose the game and we can't get any territory. It's the reason we played two rucks so much in the Voss tenure. Do we need to go back to the two rucks? One who can dominate the hitouts and one who dominates around the ground. Such a relevant question.
Yeah. It's interesting. I will still say no, I don't want to see the two rucks because I just don't know how no other teams really do it, Lockie. And when the deficiency of Pito is so much around the ground, it feels like then we're just one person less. And if we threw out 22 of them on the weekend and it looked like we were struggling to deal with Adelaide, well, we're going to be down a man if we've got Big Brad out there rucking. So I don't like the two. I get the argument for it. And maybe this was a week with a big physical ruckman to bring in Big Brad, but
it's so hard in hindsight.
I don't know. It's still not for me. Either TDK can do it and can solo ruck, or you bring in someone else that can. I don't like the idea of both of them.
We keep forgetting Brad kicking those snags, mate, in the elimination final. Don't forget that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I wouldn't be doing it this week, but I think there is going to come a time this season when we have to. Is my stance still on this?
Yeah.
That's the listener questions.
Well, let's go into the votes, Lockie. It was tough this week, but you're
Terrible.
3, you're 2, and you're 1. Knowing that the 2 votes isn't a regular who was second best on ground, although maybe this week it has to be. The 2 votes basically for new listeners goes to the person who played above what we normally expect of them that needs a bit of a shout out. Lockie, your votes this week.
I'm not sure how aligned we'll be, but I've gone Crips 3. And for my overperformer, I've put Ollie Hollins. I thought he just tried the hardest out of anyone in this game. And 1 vote, I'm doing a proper Ian gag vote on this one, which is what the 1 vote is for. I'm giving my 1 vote to Cooper Lord because I genuinely feel sorry for him in terms of how this season is playing
vote.
out.
That's rough. See, at least when I did my votes, I gave them all to Jack Silvani. You're giving a sympathy vote out to Cooper Lord. It wasn't even on performance. I love that from you.
Sub, VFL, full game, half forward. Like, I just think at this stage, I know we're not blessed with options in the VFL. Please just either play him as the 4th/5th midfielder or in the VFL and let him just dominate in there.
Absolutely fair. I've gone Cripper 3, thought he was best on. 2, I gave to Nick Haynes. I know he had like an amazing game last week, but you don't know what he's going to bring the week after. And a game where we're so soundly beaten around the ground, the defense was under so much pressure. I did not expect any of them to stand up, and I thought he really did again. So Nick Haynes gets my 2, and then George Hewitt gets the 1 for just being, the other real competent guy out there. We'll try to be very quick, I guess, on the St. Kilda game because there's not a lot to preview. There's not a lot to be excited about, and I don't want to spend an hour breaking down what could be. I feel like it's a week where we just need to see what happens and review it. So do you have any easy team changes this week to fix it? Do you have any one little thing that you want fixed this week to end the episode on?
I have more outs than I do ins. So I need to hear from you what your perspective is, because I think if Silvani has to come in if fit. And from there, I really struggle to have Doherty, Akers, and even Motlop for me in the team at the moment. Where are you at with your team changes?
Yeah, it's rough. I think I'm similar with you, Young and Silvani. If Sauce is fit, nothing on Lewis Young. He's there to be the depth. My obvious move, why was Cow in the sub? I mean, we could spend 20 minutes unpacking that. That's so strange. But I think the obvious thing for us with particularly this mid-forward issue, Cowan comes in, moves to the back line, Ollie Holland's back to the wing. All of a sudden,
Yes.
you've got one of your better users moving the ball forward.
Yes.
Blake Acres, you put it up to us the other week. He's not playing well. I just don't think he's bringing anything positive. It's not necessarily too negative, but it's not positive. So he's gone this week. And I'm just trying something different in the midfield with this, Lockie. I'm trying maybe a bit more Sam Walsh half forward as well. Just something else around, which means helping Cooper Lord in a midfield role as well. Get us a bit of a spark. It's Ben Camporelli making his debut. Just get something going. He's played a bit half forward as well. I don't know, just a bit of spark in there. And
Love
then I'm keeping Jesse Motlop basically in the team because there's no one else, but making him play more in a forward pocket role, saying Lockie Fogarty push up, be that high half forward instead. Maybe you can get some center bounces like we've seen in previous seasons. I want you locked to that forward pocket. Will White can roam as well if we need him to. And then, unfortunately, I love Doc, but I just don't think we're playing him in the right spot. I think if he's in the team, he's half back. Older players in the AFL right now are getting pushed down there to be that general. Feel like that's his best use at the moment if we want him in this team. Fortunately, it's not happening. I'm not going to say too many bad words at the moment because I love the man so much. But I'd probably make way for him and then let the sub be Lucas Camporelli. Let the Camporellis be there together. Maybe that's what we need in the change rooms. And then he allows someone to come on that has a bit of speed. He can go on that wing, let Walsh then spend more time in the midfield late, allow Ollie Hollands to go and roam around. I feel like it gives us more run, more options to fix a few of the deficiencies right now. Those are my kind of team changes just to get us a bit more fast and outside run.
That would make me so excited if we see that tomorrow on the team sheet.
It feels very Carlton. Oh, you're not happy? Here's a debut. There you go.
Here's some twins. I really hope we see that. An announcement today.
Yeah. No, so let us know your thoughts on everything we've covered in this game. We'll be back next week to review the St Kilda game, which hopefully is a big win. It's going to be an interesting view this week. The Tom de Koning St Kilda thing is there. The whole sauce, Ross Lyon. I hope that we can see more Michael Voss versus Chris Scott this week. We know Ross Lyon is kind of outcoached him the last few times. It's a great test to see what can happen. It's the where to from here, and this is us figuring it out. 3 games before the bye, we're going to find out where that Carlton sits. There's no need going way too high after a big win against Geelong. Enjoy it, of course. There's no need going too low against Adelaide. We'll find out this week what the real Carlton is. Up the bloody baggers. See you guys next time.